Welcome to the ultimate supercar test. I've been asked to choose the best machine from this amazing collection worth over £3 million. Most supercars spend their lives under a dust sheet in an air-conditioned garage. It's a crime. They should be seen, heard and driven. Or should they? I'm looking for a rocket ship I can use on the road and the track. It must be exclusive and do over 200 miles an hour. It should also be rewarding to the driver and the eye and be genuinely usable. One thing's for sure, we're going to have a lot of fun finding out. So let's check out the contenders. Lamborghini Murcielago, now with Audi fit, finish and drivability apparently. We'll check that out for you. Koenigsegg CC8S, made in Sweden, a new name to supercars and drop-dead gorgeous. Bugatti EB110, a true supercar or another example of the fat early 90s. Ferrari F40, a race car for the road. Can it cut it in this company? Jaguar XJ220, I'm really looking forward to driving that again. It's a big car with a lot of road presence. Pagani Zonda S, another spaghetti supercar or a genuine contender? TVR T440R, the British Bulldog that apparently does well over 200 miles an hour. Should it even be here? Lamborghini Diablo GT, bling bling. I wonder if it goes as fast as it looks. McLaren F1, still officially the fastest road car and definitely the most expensive. Is it still the king of the castle, or will it be beaten by this, the Enzo Ferrari, full of Formula One technology? These are today's contenders. So first up is this, Ferrari's legendary F40. It has a twin-turbo 3-litre V8 that generates 478 brake horsepower and is good for 201 miles per hour. On the move in an F40 Ferrari. She's 16 years old, this model. Can this beauty stack up in this company? It's pure, it's just 1,100 kilograms. 3-litre, twin turbo. It should be really lively, it should feel like a racing car. That's what they say, it's a race car on the road. Certainly basic enough inside. And it just builds speed without a lot of fuss at all. This one's been tweaked a little bit. It's got slightly more horsepower than a standard car. A bit of understeer on turn in and lift off oversteer there. 5-speed gearbox. No goodies at all. No nannying electronics at all. It's down to me to control this little baby. The steering comes alive at speed. It's dead and heavy when you're not moving with a great deal of speed, but on the track it suddenly comes alive. It's certainly lively at the front end, and it does have the feel of a lightweight racing car, touring car, sports car, call it what you like. It holds the apex as well, but it's got a very early basic feel to it, no doubt about it. Brake pedal's pretty solid though, not just somewhere to rest your foot on your way to an accident. It does slow the car down. The lightest car in the field, down into Old Hall. Let's throw it in, see what happens. A little bit of understeer. It'll just come round a bit at the back on the way out as you try and apply the power. Not quite enough rear grip. Showing its age a little bit. The F40 is light, pure, honest and a lot of fun on the Alton Park track. But like I said, they do call it a race car for the road, so let's see what it's like in the real world. So the F40 was great around the racetrack, but remember, I'm looking for a supercar I can use every day. So we bought one here to leafy Hampstead, where the owner of such a car might just live, and therefore every journey would start from here. But what's it going to be like? Well, for £200,000, you get no power steering. That's going to be a wrench. You need the leg of a shot putter to press the clutch. It's glued together. There's no music. There are no carpets. You have to wind down your own windows, and it seems there's an old piece of linen line to open the door. And I also wonder exactly how it's going to compare with this car here. A Ferrari yellow Fiat Punto Sporting, nonetheless, made by the same parent company as the Ferrari. Look what this has got. Electric mirrors, carpets, seats 5, full orchestra, ABS, airbags, everything you could want. 6-speed gearbox. That's one more than the Ferrari. The bottom line is they're both registered for the road. I wonder how it'll compare against me and the F40 in the London traffic. Even before I fired it up, the Punto's off on the daily commute, leaving me to gingerly reverse out, catching the spoiler not once, but twice in the process. 3-point turn, no problem in the Fiat. But if you turn down a dead end in the F40, well, prepare yourself for something more like a 5-point turn. Oh, and watch out for that spoiler again. In the real world, at slow speeds, the brakes don't really work, and the clutch and steering are both outrageously heavy. The Punto relishes sleeping policemen, whilst this supercar seemingly wants to wake them all up. Width restrictions don't worry the little Fiat. But even though the F40 isn't actually that wide, you have to watch out for those pricey alloys. And you would hate to scrape the single layer of paint from that gorgeous carbon fibre body. At a tricky junction, people will even reverse to let the Punto out. But not a bright red Ferrari, it seems. So while the Punto is nearing its destination, I'm sat in traffic, doing a gym workout in a sauna, staring at a dashboard which looks about as interesting as a wet Monday morning. So, as I suspected, the F40 is fun on the track given its age, but as an everyday supercar, it's, shall we say, a challenge. Let's move on. This is a Lamborghini Diablo. Not any old raging bull, but the last of the line. A range-topping 211-mile-an-hour GT version that was quickly slipped out of the factory before those sensible Germans from Audi took over the company. Under the not-so-subtle body kit, the GT is actually lighter than the standard Diablo and more powerful. Out onto the track then in the fearsome Diablo GT. Surely a car more designed for the road than the racetrack. First impressions are that it turns in extremely well. The nose of the car, because it was such a big machine, just points in handily at the apex. I want to try and heel and toe, but the throttle and brake pedal are too far apart, and I can't really get a nice, slick shift. I can blip it on the way down, but not with my foot on the brake at the same time. See if I can get used to that. Flat on the floor now. I mean, it pulls quite well over 5,000 revs. The brakes are solid. Let's check it out under heavy braking here for the Hizzy chicane. Good. Can't complain about that at all. And nice and stable and square. It feels though as if the brakes are not going to do too many hot laps of a racetrack. And once again, you've got to get it well over 5,000. Long throttle travel. Back end of the car going like there, and even at 110 miles an hour, the wheels lifting slightly off the ground and spinning. Once again, nose pointing in very predictably, very nicely. A bit damp under the trees here, so give it a bit of respect. Check the brakes then, down into Lodge hairpin. Gearbox a little bit clunky, you have to give it a fistful to get it to change. So, I'm happy with the handling, I'm moderately happy with the brakes. The gearbox is a little bit clunky and heavy. The engine, a bit empty. Still, making plenty of noise. So the Diablo GT handles and brakes better than I expected. But even though it has allegedly about 100 brake horsepower more than the F40, it's nothing like as much fun on the track. Perhaps it'll be a different story out on the road. Remember, I want to test whether these supercars can cope with the sort of mundane chores that we all have to do every day. like popping down the supermarket, for instance, for the weekly shop, including, of course, finding a parking space. As ever, one spot left, and it's absolutely tiny. Let's see if we can get this baby in there. I'm going to have to open the door and have a look. Now I'm going to have to take my seatbelts off so that I can get out and have a look. That is seriously tight. Problem is, now the mirror's up in the air. The rear view camera helps a little, but it's strange. It doesn't give you a feeling of distance, and it reverses the image. That'll do. Luckily the door goes up rather than out, otherwise I'll have no chance. Let's hope the shopping's a bit less stressy. Well, that went all right. The more you spend, the more you save, of course. Let's see how we can get it in. It's quite a big car, actually. Let's take a look under the front first. And it's full of a vent for some kind of cooling. We'll get some red wine in there, though. Bit of room temperature when it gets back. Extra virgin olive oil. What else can we get in? Spaghetti might just fit on that ledge, but it might block the fan. Anyway, we'll give it a try like that. Right, now surely they left some space at the back, as there's none at the front. But they haven't. It's full of 6-litre V12 and a big exhaust system. At least I can warm the bread up on the way home, so we'll slot that in there. But the rest of it is going to have to come inside with me. Now I don't look so cool with my shopping in the car with me. The eggs can go in the glove box, and the toilet rolls in the passenger seat, in case we get any nervous passengers. So, when it comes to real-world practicality, the Diablo GT is right up there with the Ferrari F40. It's a nightmare. Parking takes forever, and there's no space to put anything. Plus, with all of those scoops, vents and wings, it's difficult not to feel very conspicuous when you're driving it. Lamborghini knew that too, and that's why they gave us this, the Murcielago. The Murcielago's styling is understated for a Lamborghini, maybe because the company is now owned by Audi, and rather bizarrely, they got a Belgian to design it. But it's still dominated by a gargantuan V12. It will see the dark side of 200 miles an hour, and it will crack 60 in just 3.8 seconds. Lamborghini are very happy for this Murcielago to be considered as an easy-to-drive, everyday supercar. We thought we'd try and find out. We've got Alison here, who's got very little driving experience, and we wonder if she can tame a 205-mile-an-hour supercar. Let's give it a go.
I've never driven anything like this in my life. I like the wing mirrors.
How long have you been driving?
A while, on and off.
Well, you haven't stalled it so far, so
No.
it seems quite easy to put away in, yeah?
It's, I'm actually really enjoying it.
What's the fastest thing you've ever driven, would you say?
Well, my Fiat Seicento, which I don't particularly get up to great speeds on, because...
Fiat 600. Is that 600 horsepower or 600
Oh, no, look, don't
cc?
ask me tricky questions
Okay.
like that. How quickly does it do 0 to 60, do you reckon?
Under 4 seconds, because it's four-wheel drive and it's got loads of grunt.
It's lovely to drive, Martin.
Well, you know, they said it was easier to drive. Alison soon got the hang of things, checking out its straight-line speed and its four-wheel drive traction. Yeah, OK, it's me, really. And now for the track. This is going to be interesting to see how the Murcielago compares with the Diablo on the racetrack. Four-wheel drive versus two-wheel drive. And immediately I can heel and toe. But as you balance the car on the throttle, it tends to rear its nose up a little bit. So that's not exactly what you want. You can get used to it, I'm sure. Gearbox much easier. So I've got a lot more confidence going into the corners that I'll be in the right gear when I get there instead of fumbling for them. The balance is changing, though, very much dependent on the throttle position. You can turn this car on the throttle, but not in a particularly nice way. It's not like it generates some oversteer from it. It just tends to move around within its chassis, down into Hizzy's hairpin. Well, the gearbox is much better, but the brakes don't quite feel up to it. You've got to keep a consistent amount of power on to stop this movement of the chassis, which is changing the handling balance. Brake pedal plunging a long way to the floor there. A little bit of turn in, understeer. I wouldn't say I can feel totally confident with the handling. Certainly accelerates nicely. 450 pound-feet of torque, 580 horsepower. Understeer again towards the exit of the corner. Not got the same front end on it of the Diablo GT. So much nicer on the gearbox though. But the brakes are disappointing, no doubt about it. You see, as I keep modulating the throttle in by small amounts, I'm just picking the nose up and generating some understeer. Thought it might handle a bit better than this. The Murcielago, engine and gearbox great, but the handling and brakes are definitely biased towards road use. Still, at least that makes this Lamborghini a supercar that can be used every day. Next, please. This is the TVR T440R, and earlier I questioned whether it should even be here. Well, let's find out. It has, as its name suggests, 440 brake horsepower, and it will hit 60 miles an hour in under 4 seconds. It may not have the prestige or racing pedigree of some of the other machines in my supercar lineup, but it does have one advantage over them. Put away your supercar badge snobbery for a moment and think about this. The Ferrari F40 that'll just creep over 200 will cost you about £1,000 per mile an hour. The Bugatti, half as much again, and the XJ220, the big fat Jag, over double. This car, if it goes as fast as they say, costs you a mere 400 quid per mile an hour, and if nothing else, it goes and sounds like this. The sound is phenomenal, and there are plenty of other things to like about this TVR. Firstly, it's just £75,000, cheap as chips in this company. Secondly, it'll do 0 to 100 in just 8 seconds. Thirdly, there's not a panel, nut, bolt or screw that's not made in Britain. Rule Britannia. Finally, last but not least, they say it'll do 215 miles an hour. Not today, this is still a prototype, but we are going to give it a bit of a pasting around the racetrack. This is so reminiscent, maybe when I was coming around in a racing car. It's got that sort of lazy, deep-throated noise. It's certainly got a pin-sharp front on it. Traction's all right. I can find the right gear, we'll be away. And a nice little blip of the throttle. Brake pedal's solid as a rock. Whoops, bit too much curb there. Suspension is very, very stiff. As ever, a long throttle travel. TVRs tend to have that. Off we go then down the hill. Let's see if she'll stop for the Izzy chicane. Brakes are good, no problem with that. Had 2 or 3 bites at turning, I've got to smooth it down a little bit on the wheel. Just incredibly noisy if you're on the road. On the racetrack in a helmet, it doesn't matter. Let's see how she goes into the Druids double apex. Will it stay consistent? A little bit stiff on the rebound there, just hopping over the top of the hill. Good confidence on the brakes. That's all right, not bad at all. But I do feel confident giving it a nice late brake into turn 1 here. Touch late in the back end over the crest into Cascades where Senna parked his Roll Formula 3 car on my shoulder. Gearbox is nice and positive. Touch of understeer building as the tyres build up temperature and launch into the cambered apex here. Get on the throttle, see what happens. Traction very good. The car's much better suited to the racetrack. This is good fun to drive. I am enjoying this. I want the next corner to arrive so I can have a go at it. Incredible noise. I hope you can hear me on this microphone. The steering wheel's so lively. Gearbox good, brakes great, handling a little bit pointy. A lot of fun. Engine marginal. So the T440R is better than I ever expected on the track. But that was in the drive. Introduce water into the equation and it's a very different story. The TVR, like most of the supercars in my lineup, has huge power, a light body and rear-wheel drive, which makes them all a right handful in the wet. Obviously, this is a specially watered track, but it's set up to simulate real-life driving. It could just as well be the greasy surface on a roundabout near you. I can control it, but if I squeeze on just a bit too much power, it's all great fun, especially if you like going sideways. So, the T440R. It's in the 200-mile-an-hour club and it's fun on the track. Plus, you get unusual looks and a truly unique interior. But it has to be said, it's a little bit too raw, even for an ex-F1 driver like me. This is the Pagani Zonda, and apparently it can do 220 miles per hour. But as I've yet to drive it, I have no idea whether this is another spaghetti supercar or a bona fide member of the club. So I came to Modena, the sacred home of the Italian supercar, to find out what this Pagani is really all about. Paganis are made here, nearby the established giants Ferrari and Lamborghini. But this £320,000 supercar is crafted in a small industrial unit on the outskirts of town. This small room is where all the Paganis are built, and it's very evocative for me. It reminds me so much of the shops where all my Le Mans cars were built. Small teams of people working on the car, hand-building it for you, discussing various aspects, organised clutter around the outside. The cars themselves, though, are superb. The detailing is absolutely lovely. Look at this over here, front suspension, brake and hub. That could be going to Le Mans any day now. The interior is stunning. The seats are custom built from leather, and there's no rumbly old V8 in the back. For your money, you get a 7.3-litre V12 from Mercedes-Benz AMG. Before I get to push this Zonda hard for the first time, I've really got to say I'm not convinced about the looks yet. A bit too much function over form for me. Let's take it and see what the Italians think. They know a bit about style. Well, they seem to really like it, and I have to say it's growing on me too. That's the great thing about a true supercar. It's not just the thrill of driving it, it's also the pleasure you give to others. But the real pleasure will be up in the mountains at speed. Immediately you feel this Pagani Zonda is sorted out. It gives you confidence straight away. The engine is fantastic. It's silky smooth like a turbine. Peaches and cream, it's just everything you'd want. Turns in nicely, none of the understeer of the Murcielago, loads of grunt, wonderful sound, but the brakes, very, very strong, good feel underneath the pedal. The gearbox, good, but not great, a little bit notchy. That would be better if it was slightly smoother. Inside the car, it feels to me like a Le Mans car, like a sports car. You're sitting quite close to the centre of the car. The view forward is absolutely excellent, and unusually for these supercars, you can see out of the rear mirror too. This is a tricky little road. What a lot of fun. Let's give it a bootful. Yeah, that's good. I like that. It'll soon stick the back end out with too much throttle if you're a bit of a hooligan. But it's controllable and still the car building up speed, building up pace, moving forward. I'm just a touch wary of the back end of the car over the bumps with a lot of power on. That's when the traction control switched off, and no ABS, of course. Another hairpin there. Incredible acceleration. Look at this little S-bend here. Let's give it a little bit through here. You can throw it into the corner. like a racing car, just trying to lock its front wheels gently there. Oh, nice. I couldn't wait to get back to the UK and thrash one properly around Alton Park. No signs of it being too soft in roll in the early stages. Now, I didn't like the gearbox of the car in Italy. Later on, Mr. Pagani himself said it was a brand new box and hadn't been fully run in. This should be better, but still I feel the need to be very positive and firm with that gear shift. Changes direction nicely. And this is a new part of the racetrack that's completely different from when I used to race Senna here. I had a couple of epic races here with Senna in Formula 3 when we were having a ding-dong battle back in '83. And I've driven several different types of car around here. It is a thrilling racetrack into Druids Bend. The back end wants to step out. It's set up a little bit for oversteer, so you still have to watch it. Remember, 555 horsepower. But more importantly in this car, 750 newton meters of torque. That's a lot of grunt underneath your right foot, so you've got to watch the back end. Down into the hairpin, the brake pedal feels really positive and firm. It's good. It went into the apex nicely, so just watch the back then. Dares leap over the blind crest. Still being careful with the throttle pedal in these tricky conditions. This is a great car. It was great on the road, and it works well on the racetrack too. Really, I don't see any flaws, except for the high-speed balance in the wet. Apart from those slight oversteery antics and the notchy gearbox, the Zonda is a truly amazing supercar. Easily the best so far. As you can see, I'm driving a Volvo Estate to be precise. I love the fact that it's full of airbags, side impact protection, big comfy sofa leather chairs. It's safer than a bank vault in here. Why? Because it's made by Swedish people. They're a caring, sharing, environmentally friendly greenie bunch who love nothing more than providing the world with safe, big and efficient transport. So you may find it unbelievable then that the Swedes also make a car like this beauty, the Koenigsegg CC8S. Hardly a Volvo Estate, is it? Look, 650 horsepower, less than 1,200 kilograms, no boot worth talking about, not even a spare wheel, just 2 seats. There is a token airbag though, and you've never seen a door like this. What a lovely example of a dihedral synchro helix door actuation. Supercar special already. You'll not steal this in a hurry. It's got a very unusual starting procedure, like Starship Enterprise in here. Press the power button, put on the ignition. Hold the same power button, hit the starter. There's no doubt that this is a stunning looking supercar. Kind of a cross between a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. The interior is unique though, and I love the touring car racer-like gear stick. So what kind of supercar have the Swedes put together? Well, it's as far away from a Volvo as you could ever imagine. It's so noisy. You feel like you're inside the engine, not the cockpit. But it has got loads of grunt, 650 horsepower of it. It really does accelerate nicely. The gearbox is good too. Got a long throw on the lever, but it enables you to place it nicely. And it feels a bit like a DTM or a touring car, right where you need it. The steering is weighted well, and the nose of the car turns in very nicely. There goes that incredibly noisy engine. The driving position is good, and the seat, the steering wheel and the pedals, exactly where I want them. You can move them around, that's good. Forward visibility, excellent. Reminds me very much of the Toyota GT1 cars I drove at Le Mans in '99 and 2000. Rearward visibility, difficult. Mirror's not too bad, but I find myself not having to be concerned about where the rear tyres are, as I did in the Pagani. It's not so wide. The back follows the front more naturally, and you just press on. But I have to say, whilst it's got potential, It very much feels a car to me that needs an awful lot of development. It's very rough around the edges. I'm not that happy pushing it on the road. Let's see what it goes like on the racetrack. As we venture onto the slippery and still wet Alton Park, I don't know whether to be thrilled, excited, or totally intimidated by this Koenigsegg, which is allegedly the fastest car in the world at 242 miles an hour, conveniently 1 mile an hour faster than officially recorded in the McLaren. Initial grip is good. It surely is one of the noisiest cars in the world. We had it at 111 decibels on the road. So it doesn't want to put the power down, does it, in these really slimy conditions. Let's see what it will brake like. Not bad, not as well sorted as the Pagani though. It's not as balanced and stable. Difficult to apply the power smoothly, which is surprising, although it is a supercharged V8. I think that this is a car that's had quite a lot of use, and it's getting a bit dog-eared, in fairness to it. But hey, this is what they've given me to drive, so I'm going to drive it, and I'm going to tell you about it. And it's nowhere near as well balanced as the Pagani. So the Koenigsegg isn't the finished article just yet, but if they can ever get it to go as good as it looks, it will be special. But that's a long way off. Next up, we have the Jaguar XJ220. What is this 14-year-old supercar doing in my exclusive lineup? And why does it have to be seriously considered? Well, it's certainly not because it cost £400,000 as they launched it into a worldwide recession. And it's definitely not because it's pushed along by a glorious, wailing, race-winning pedigree V12. This has got a very humble and clattery V6 twin-turbo. And it couldn't be because its 550 horsepower is transmitted through a high-tech four-wheel drive system. This, despite the promises, is merely rear-wheel drive. And it's certainly not the brakes. Never step out in front of a moving one of these. And it's not the usability, it's the widest supercar in the world. It's just got enough room for two people and a tiny briefcase. So why is the Jaguar XJ220 in my top 10 list? Well, many other supercars claim to do well over 200 miles an hour. This Jaguar actually does it. How do I know? Well, I was turning the wheel and pressing the throttle when it happened. Back in 1992, Jaguar were very keen for this car to do 220 miles an hour. So they sent me a private jet, sent me down to Nardo in the south of Italy, where I had one of the scariest days of my life. This is what it was like. It was an exciting opportunity, and we headed off. Initially, something around 210 miles an hour. Then they took off the catalytic converters, and we went out for a serious attempt at braking 220 miles an hour. We were pushing this car to a top speed that theoretically it could easily do, but in reality, would it work? Would the aerodynamics be stable? Would the engine cope with it? Would there be oil surge, for example, as we were constantly turning right? But nonetheless, the car did the job beautifully. When I got out, the bonnet was on stalks. It had stretched all the brackets to hold the bonnet down. And I suddenly realised if that had come up at speed, the aerodynamics would have been incredibly powerful. I would have lost my visibility. Maybe the front of the car would take off. There was one skinny little barrier between me and the Adriatic Sea on half the circuit. But, you know, I didn't check the tyres. I didn't really know the car. But on that day, it scared me a little bit, just to know what might have happened. They say we actually did it because it's a banked circuit, and if you put in the factor to allow for a straight and level piece of road, we did the equivalent of 222 miles an hour. But officially, the top speed, the VMAX, was 217.1, if my memory serves me correctly. At the time, it was a new world record for a road car. Over a decade later, what's the Jag like now? The XJ220 feels at home in this kind of environment. It doesn't matter that it's wide anymore. It feels ready to just easily build speed like an express train, like an intercity, coasting down the back straight here at Myra. It really feels good. I immediately feel confidence again in the package. Coming into these bank corners, it does feel right, and you have to say, this is where the XJ220 is in its element. It is a classy performer at very high speed, cornering about 120, building up to 150 down the straights. There goes the windscreen wiper off again, just like I had on that day back in 1992. The car finally feels as beautiful as it looks. So away from the high-speed bowl, ironically, having set a new world record in this car back in 1992 for a road car top speed, I never actually put it onto the road, so this is a new experience for me. First signs the engine doesn't sound that good. I do remember that well. It's got plenty of torque and plenty of tremendous feeling of acceleration, but it doesn't have a nice sound to it. But the car sits very well on the road, very square, and it's got a curious thing that every so often the steering weight just loads up when you're not really expecting it, and you have to really kick in to keep the car turning through the corner. There's a nasty little surprise when you least need it. Brakes, marginal. You don't want to turn up in a £400,000 supercar, even though you can buy one of these for much less than that now, and have your arrival announced by the squealing of the brakes. With that mega top speed, the big Jag was the fastest supercar in the world, and surely it's still one of the most beautiful. It's just a crying shame that Jaguar didn't give that stunning design the engine and brakes it truly deserved. Mind you, those looks and 217 is not too shabby. This is the only car in my lineup that you have to be invited to buy. And if you're one of the lucky few, it will set you back £450,000. It's got a 12-cylinder, 6-litre engine, giving over 660 horsepower. It does 217 miles per hour and tips the scales at a mere 1,365 kilograms. So to the Enzo, named after the great man himself. Not difficult to see where the inspiration came from for the front styling. Plenty of Formula One clues inside too, with paddle gear shift, lots of dials and buttons on the steering wheel, adjustable pedals and carbon ceramic discs. Unlike Michael Schumacher's Formula One car though, this comes in 3 colours, red, yellow and black. But is it a good-looking car? What do you think? To me, it's dramatic, but not exactly beautiful. The devil is in the detail, though, and there are some lovely touches. I could spend hours exploring this car. Back in the UK for a drive, and to add to the thrill, it's raining and the roads are treacherous. As this car has been supplied by a good friend of mine, it's the 4th one they ever built, I'm not going to be the first person to write off one of the 399 limited run. Never have I been so challenged on the road, especially with the braking, downshift and engine characteristics with zero grip. I'm fed up with these roads, let's head to the racetrack. Race mode at the moment, so it should change gear a little bit quicker. Glorious wail from that V12 Ferrari engine. Little twist of oversteer there just to make sure I'm paying attention. At the moment the traction control is ready to square that up, and I was surprised. It feels quite wide at the back. Fantastic view in your mirrors. Your interior mirror, you're looking at the Ferrari V12 through a hole. And then in your side mirrors, either side, you're looking at the enormous air intakes, and such an experience in here. Now, in a Formula 1 car, you use these semi-automatic and now fully automatic gearboxes, almost always changing up at full throttle. It doesn't happen on the road, but it does happen on the racetrack. I have to tell you, I've been on the receiving end of thousands upon thousands of automatic shifts in a Formula 1 car, semi-auto shifts in a Formula 1 car, and they do not feel like this. It's got a nice blipper on the downshift, but they're much, much faster in the F1 car with straight cut gears and dog ring gearboxes. If you think you're experiencing what Michael Schumacher experiences, you're not. It turns in nicely, but it will just kick its back end out when I don't really want it to, when I want to be getting down the racetrack, traction control cutting in. Let's get rid of that and see what she's like then. A little orange light comes up on the top of the steering wheel to say traction control is off. So now it's down to me to put the right amount of power in. Now, that was for me to have to control. The electronics are not going to cut in. I have to say, I much prefer that. I drove this car on a wet road this morning on a leafy lane, and I have to say I found it extremely intimidating because it was difficult, especially with the downshifts and a lot of engine braking, ready to lock the rear wheels on a wet road. In the dry though, it's fine, quite neutral, good turn in, good front end, with that little tendency just to kick out. Brilliant acceleration. There we go, past the pits, down into Old Hall. Now the brakes are really working. Those carbon metallics are really beginning to do their jobs now. This car is nicely sorted, unquestionably done a lot of work on the racetrack.
The slow-shifting gearbox is the only disappointment. The Enzo is beautifully put together and super fast on the track, as you would expect from Ferrari. In 1991, Bugatti built the most technologically advanced supercar in the world. The EB110 was so far ahead of the game it made anything from Jaguar, Ferrari and Lamborghini look prehistoric. You're probably thinking this is yet another Italian supercar styled by Gandini with an engine in the back the size of Tahiti. Well, you'd be right, but the Bugatti had so much more. The engine was a lightweight 3.5-litre V12. It had trick aerodynamics, four-wheel drive, ABS, power-assisted steering, 6-speed gearbox, wood and leather. It had everything the Jaguar XJ220 should have had, but didn't. Plus, the EB110 was cheaper, and being a Bugatti, it was a whole lot more exclusive. Considering this is over a decade old, I'm a fan of the car from Granite Looks and the technology they tried to apply. It's the second time I've driven an EB110. The first time was back in 1992 when my Grand Prix teammate was Michael Schumacher at Benetton. He turned up for a test at the Paul Ricard circuit in the south of France in a bright yellow one and offered me the chance of a run. I took it down the famous road from Paul Ricard to Brundle. Gave it a bit of a thrashing. I mean, it was quick, but I thought it was a little bit strange. Had no power till it got to about 5,000 revs. And then you have to keep stirring up the wide gated gearbox to keep it running. I told Michael when I got back to the circuit and he next got out of the Benetton, yeah, it was okay, but nothing special in my view. His famous long chin dropped just a little bit further. He thought it was great. You've got to remember though, the car he'd come from was a 5-door Escort hatchback. I guess he's moved on a bit these days. But it is a car that you can cover some distance in. You could happily take somebody else's girlfriend away for a nice weekend at a country house hotel in this car. It doesn't rattle the fillings out of your teeth. I suspect it'll work better on the racetrack, where you can keep it in the zone, choose your braking points, choose your gears, and that's where we're going to take it now. amazing difference, isn't it? This is fun to drive on the racetrack. I can really get into this. It's so different to the road, where I just could never really get it up and running before I seemed to come across a corner or a tractor or something, and it had no power whatsoever. Now it's great, and I'm even beginning to somehow get a grip on this wide gate of the gearbox, and the braking is very stable. Very impressed with that. Four-wheel drive then now. The track is still pretty tricky in places, it's damp, but I've got the confidence to get on the throttle earlier, knowing it's going to tend to gently understeer. And all of a sudden the gear ratios come into their own, and it all starts to make sense. Front right tyre through this long cascade bend, beginning to hurt already, just a little bit less grip, lap by lap. Let's try it into another one here at Ireland. You can hear it, its tyre starting to sing now. Into the shell hairpin, throw it in with some confidence and start squeezing the throttle. In a racing situation, you really want to treat, to a certain extent, the brake pedal and the throttle like it's got an egg underneath it. You don't want to brake. It's not all about going sideways. Sideways is not fast. The only time this car slightly makes me nervous is over a crest where I have to start braking and downshifting. The back end just wants to step out, and it's just slightly a question of, I wonder what's going to happen next. It's easily correctable, but much happier with this car in track conditions. Not something I'd want for the road, but given it felt so silky smooth and had a sort of a limo ride compared to the others, it's okay on the road if you could just get rid of that turbo lag. The Bugatti with those 4 lazy turbos is tiresome on the road, but it does manage to get back some cred on the track. This is the McLaren F1. It may be over a decade old, but it's still officially the fastest supercar in the world. But at £640,000, it's also the most expensive. Mind you, it's not difficult to see where your money goes. The McLaren F1 was designed as a road car, but it went on to win many races. It's got a quad-cam 6-litre V12 engine, especially designed for this car by the M division of BMW, giving over 627 horsepower. Any car with gold foil for heat insulation has to be special. This particular one's got a GT pack with an extra rear wing, but as standard, they still have positive downforce at speed. Uniquely, it's a 3-seater, not elegant to get into, but very special when you get to the central helm driving position. Let's see what it goes like on the road. A McLaren F1, it's pouring with rain. It's a leafy autumnal day, there's mud on the road. It's been a long hot summer, and the roads are supremely slippery, as we just nearly found out. I'm sitting plumb in the middle of this car. I feel immediately in charge of the car and the road. It's not ducking and diving on the bumps and cambers. It feels planted, but no traction control or ABS on this one. No nannying electronics. You've got to drive it and respect it. The power delivery is absolutely linear. The gearbox is a treat. Quite a long throw forwards and backwards, but very, very precise across the gate. The clutch is light and precise too. The brake pedal is firm and reassuring, but it takes a little time for those big performance brakes to bite. I love this car, the integrity, it's hewn from solid. Everything has a function and a form. There's nothing more in here than you really need, but there is everything you do need. It's great inside, the wipers are working, it's not misting up, nothing rattling and shaking at all. The interior feels good, purposeful. I love the central driving position. My two best friends can come and join me in here on a journey across the continent. It's got that kind of comfort level and feel. It's not noisy, but when the noise does come in, it is of intake and power, not of rattly, oily bits meeting each other just behind your ear. It's a beautifully linear delivery of power from that V12 BMW engine, and the gearbox and ratios are well suited. It's very tractable. You can cruise along at low speed, or you can give it plenty and it'll answer your call, whatever you want. As you can tell, I quickly fell in love with the McLaren F1. You wonder what there is left to say. Let's put it on the racetrack and see if I still have the same feeling. First impressions are a great turn into the corners. The nose of the car goes in well, but mid-corner on the apex, the steering gets a bit heavy and dead. That was a disappointment. On the exit, the traction was superb, and the general balance of the car, oversteer and understeer, was just what I wanted. But the brakes were a major disappointment. I thought they were performance related, but they just couldn't hold a candle to those on the Enzo Ferrari. Nonetheless, a lovely package, road bias, tremendous experience. It's been a great privilege driving these supercars, but now it's crunch time and I've got to put them in order. 10th then, the Diablo GT. Every time I pressed the throttle pedal, I wanted to send the engine a sorry card and a bunch of flowers. The TVR, just too leery and noisy for me. The Koenigsegg, surprisingly down in 8th place. It's beautiful, but it's just not sorted. Feels like an early prototype. Great car in there though. The Bugatti is a bit of a limousine in this company, but it's got some lovely detail and it's quite sophisticated. 6th, the Jaguar XJ220. Looks great, but that engine sounds like a skeleton rap dancing in an empty biscuit tin. The Murcielago, it is very nicely sorted. Wouldn't mind one in my garage, but feels too GT-like in this company. I fell in love with the F40. It's true, honest, light, and gives you a lot of pleasure to drive. Surprise then of the group for me, Pagani Zonda S, so beautifully detailed and put together. Clearly then there are two cars missing. Let's remind ourselves just how good they are. So after a month-long battle, it's down to these two. Amazingly, the Enzo is over a decade younger than the McLaren F1. I prefer the Ferrari steering, brakes and dials, but everything else is better on this car. It is so practical, it's sensational in every way. The McLaren F1 is still the king. I like the looks, performance, feel, drivability, visibility, three-seater usability, the engine sound, fit, finish and detail. But that's not the end of my supercar story. So, after all those incredible driving experiences, it's the McLaren F1, the supercar I most want to drive. But it's 10 years old. Surely something can beat it. Well, maybe in 2004 that will happen. There's some incredible cars coming out. Not least its new younger brother, the Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren. I've been invited for an exclusive look at the SLR production line by McLaren boss Ron Dennis to see just one of the new Challengers coming to life. Using McLaren's latest pool of Formula One technology, the SLR promises to be both more powerful and even more usable than our winning F1. Fitted with a 5.4-litre supercharged V8, it generates 640 brake horsepower and reaches 60 in just 3.9 seconds. And you'll be able to hit its 210-mile-an-hour top speed in leather-lined style. It costs £250,000, which is peanuts alongside the McLaren F1. The next supercar of tomorrow is the Carrera GT. Slower in top speed than the SLR, but being a Porsche will be hard to beat on road manners. Ford haven't been on the supercar scene since the legendary GT40, but now they're back with a supercharged V8 reincarnation of the original. Good, I'm told, for 200 miles an hour plus. And finally, with the help of Volkswagen, Bugatti have been resurrected with this the Veyron. 8 litres, 16 cylinders, 4 turbos, and 1001 brake horsepower, no less. What an amazing collection. I wonder how they'll compare with this year's winner and against each other. I cannot wait to give that lot a good thrashing. Hope to see you there.